Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're doing a watercolor Zen doodle. We'll get into the project details momentarily, but first, let's talk materials. For today's project, I'm using 140-pound cold-pressed watercolor paper that I've taped down with washi tape. I have some watercolors here. I suggest selecting 2 or 3 to keep things simple. My watercolors are in tubes today, so I'm also using a paint palette. You'll also want a brush. Any brush will do, just select one that is an appropriate size for your paper. I've also got an old coffee can lid that I'm using to make large circles for my background, but that's optional. You'll also want water and paper towels. For the doodling portion, I suggest artist pens in black. I have several sizes here. I might use a white one as well. Choose the sizes that work best for you, and that's it. And as always, I've also provided the materials list in the description. So while I'm prepping the watercolors, let's talk about the project. If you aren't familiar with what a Zen doodle is, basically it's a type of doodling that uses repetitive lines, markings, and shapes to create intricate patterns. The repetitive nature of this type of doodling can help you get into a more calm or Zen-like state, hence the term Zen doodle. For today's piece, we'll be laying down a watercolor foundation first. I like to do this because it creates smaller sections and base structures for doodling versus having a completely open white space, which can feel daunting and very un-Zen-like. So I like using watercolor to break things up, and it's just beautiful to look at. Once our watercolor foundation has dried, we'll go over some basic Zendoodle strokes to get you started with your very own Zendoodle creation. All right, let's begin. First, we're going to lay down our watercolor foundation. For this, I like to work in sections to create pockets of color while also leaving some white space. This creates interesting contrast in color and also gives me fun areas and structures to doodle in and around. So let's go over a few ways to apply color. For lighter areas like the ones I'm doing now, I'm laying down water on the paper first and then tapping a color or two into that area. This naturally allows the colors to diffuse and blend in the water that's already on the paper. If you want to intensify the color in certain areas, just add more pigment. For more dynamic areas like the yellow patch I just did and this blue one I'm about to do, I'm applying the watercolor directly to the paper. Then I'm loading my brush with water and running it along one edge of the watercolor stroke to diffuse some of the color from that edge while leaving the other edge more solid and defined. This can also create a subtle gradient effect. For more defined color lines, I'm applying watercolor to the rim of my coffee lid and partially stamping it onto the paper on a few areas. You can use anything with a circular rim for this, or you can make an arc with your brush. It's just helpful to remember that the drier the paper is where you're stamping, the more the color is going to hold its structure because the water is not going to diffuse that color. So those are just a few application methods for laying down your watercolor foundation. Feel free to mix and match and play with them or come up with your own and just flow with it until you feel like your foundation is done. And then we'll move on to the doodling portion. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention one of my favorite watercolor application methods, which is splatter. So just load up your brush with watercolor and lots of water and tap it over your paper, and it is really, really fun. I highly recommend that, especially as a finishing touch. I just think it adds a lot of texture and playfulness to any watercolor foundation. All right, I feel good about this watercolor foundation, so I'm gonna let it dry and then we'll pick up with our doodling. Okay, our watercolor foundation is dry. Let's doodle do this. So, if you've never done a Zendoodle and you aren't quite sure where to start, some beginner friendly strokes are straight lines, C shapes, S shapes, circles, and dots, all of which I'll be using in today's doodle. And full disclosure, I'm taking these basic strokes directly from Zentangling, which is a more specific kind of Zendoodle, though you might hear those terms used interchangeably. Anyway, you can mix and match these strokes to create patterns or repeat an individual stroke in various sections. As you get more comfortable, you can doodle in larger structures, let's say a flower, and fill it with some of the basic strokes that I just mentioned. Just keep building and playing and growing. And rather than call out every time I make a circle or an S shape or a C shape, I thought it might be helpful to simply demonstrate different ways to play with those shapes. So I've sped up this doodling portion by like 2000% to give you the visual instead. In total, this Zen Doodle took about 3 hours to complete. You certainly don't have to do this in one sitting. You can lay the watercolor foundation one day and then pick a different section to work through daily after that. Zendoodling is more about the journey than the destination. And with that, I'm going to let the music take over while I doodle myself into a Zen state. I invite you to do the same. Okay, I'm feeling good and this Zen Doodle is done. I hope this video helped you get started on your own Zen doodling journey. I was actually thinking that I might make more Zen Doodle videos with different structure and stroke ideas. Let me know if you'd be interested. I always appreciate the feedback. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for creating with me today. Until next time, take care.